And now, before I introduce our guests, I just wanted to give you guys a little context. If you've ever seen a documentary called Never Sleep Again, which is about the Nightmare on Elm Street series, you may remember that Wes Craven explains that the reason he chose Elm Street was because of Elm Street in Dallas and because of the Kennedy assassination and how he felt it represented a loss of innocence. So there's a really neat connection with the city to this film franchise. So I think it's all coming together nicely. All right. Big warm welcome to the cast of Nightmare on Elm Street. 30th anniversary, guys. Come on up.
True gentlemen.
Make yourself comfortable. We got seats on both sides. Yeah. Let's get cozy in this cavernous room. All right, so before we get started, let's introduce everyone that's here. We've got Nancy herself, this is Heather Langenkamp. To my immediate right is Tina, Amanda Weiss. Tina! We've got Nancy's mom, Mrs. Thompson, Ronnie Blakely. And this guy, what did he play in the movie? He was Freddy Krueger. So it's been 30 years since Nightmare on Elm Street was released in theaters, and the popularity of it just continues to grow. So we still continue to connect to this film. We'll explore that idea a little bit, but I think I'd like to go down the row and kind of ask each of our guests how they got into the film, what the audition process was like. I know for you, Heather, there was something like 300 other people that tried out for the role, so how did you get it?
Actually, last week only 200 had gone out for the role. It keeps increasing by 100 every time I go to a convention. You know what I had no idea was, in the olden days, casting directors would send out a description of the character to all the agents in town.
Olden days.
Oh, I'm gonna say olden days a lot because Robert England is here. The olden days. And
during the plague years.
So every agent would send a big stack of photos to the casting director, who was Annette Benson. So I can imagine that maybe 200 pictures got sent in for the role. But, you know, when I went to the auditions, there was never more than 3 or 4 people in the room. So I don't really believe that's true.
I never asked this. Did you and Amanda go up for?
Together we were.
But was she up for Nancy too? Or did you always go up for your role?
Everybody read for Nancy.
Everybody went
But
up for
you knew
Nancy.
that you were everybody read for Nancy that was reading for the girl parts. And, but we knew that you were being picked for either of the 2 girl roles.
Right. So, I mean, I hear that there were a lot of girls, but I never saw any proof of it. And the days that I went, there were maybe 10 girls in the room, maybe. And the day we read, the first audition was on, say, a Tuesday, and then a week went by, and then the next Friday there was a callback, and that's the day I got the job. And I actually, in the new book that's coming out that Tommy Hudson wrote, a lot of you supported it on Facebook, on Kickstarter. There's a picture of my diary where you see the day I had the audition, and I say, audition horror movie. And then on a couple days later it says, I got it. And it's a really cute thing that we found when we were looking through all of, everyone was so generous in letting Tommy look through their stuff. So it's part of the book now, and I can't wait for people to see it.
Awesome.
But no, I had no idea there were lots of people up for that role.
But we did a callback together.
Yeah, so we did a callback together and sat like this. I was on the other side though.
Yeah, and
I said, he scraped his fingernails along things.
like, you had the same dream I did.
And then Wes went, you got it. And so then we got the part.
Yeah, I think we improv'd a little.
Yeah,
like we were sitting on the couch talking like girlfriends and stuff. And then we became friends after.
So Amanda, did you have any idea what you were going to be in for in terms of, you know, being tumbled around in this rotating room and, you know, there's a lot of intense things that you had to go through as an actor on this film.
Yeah, no, not even. No, and this is the thing, when you're an actor and you read a script, you're like, I talk, they talk, oh, some screen direction. I talk, oh, they say something, screen direction. Like, I didn't actually, like, take in that it was like, Tina stands in a bag of eels, Tina eats a centipede, Tina picks up, yeah, Tina sits in a body bag, Tina picks up a can of worms, Tina's on a spinning room. Like, I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, oh, you know, Tina's in a, like, love scene with Nick, and the day we went to even shoot that, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening? And Wes was like, it's in the script. I was like, oh, all right. So, yeah, so, it's just, so from that movie, I read every single word in the script. Like, I read down to where they're putting the punctuation because I want to know what I am in for. Because that was like an outward bound experience. I felt like one day I was going to come in and they're like, okay, you're going to rappel off the tower. And so, yeah, so it taught me to read scripts more thoroughly. But I still would have done it, but I wouldn't have been so surprised every day. Like, what? What am I doing? I was like, really? So, but it was fun, and Wes was great. He was just so calm, and he was so fatherly and professorial, and all these things all at the same time. That when he would explain them, he would make it sound so much better than what it was going to be. Like, this is going to be this amazing shot. And we're gonna dolly in, and you're going to be standing there lit, like, gorgeous, and there'll just be some eels. And you're like, so it always like, I was always like, God, that's gonna look amazing. And then I was like, wait a minute, what, eels, what? Yeah, so.
I think Amanda was working at the time, and she was unable to attend a famous film festival over in Brussels. And I was invited to be on the jury that year with Christopher Lee and Sam Raimi and everybody. And we had to get up at like 8 in the morning with the Belgian equivalent of Starbucks and watch, you know, Japanese horror all day. But at the entire lobby, the entire mezzanine staircase, this grand staircase, was decorated with this massive poster of Amanda Wyss with a caterpillar hanging out of her mouth. And I thought for the 2 weeks that I was there, I kept thinking Amanda would love that, she would love it. But then I thought she'd have to have a 2-story loft in New York, you know, to put that in. But it was like the only piece of artwork at the Brussels Film Festival that year was this massive recreated, elongated image of Amanda in her body bag, with an insect crawling out of her mouth. What? And give up show business?
So have you been asked to sign body bags before?
I have. I swear I have. Yeah. And it's like, just twice. They weren't clear like the one I was in the movie. They were black. But I didn't know what it was until when somebody brought it up, they set it down and they were like, and I was like, why do you want me to sign a trash bag? Because I didn't know what it was. And they were like, it's not a trash bag, it's a body bag. I was like, oh. I'm like, where'd you get a body bag? Where are you finding these things? So that was, yeah, so I signed it. I thought that was really like ingenious that they had some story about a friend who worked in I don't even know. I didn't even want to know.
Ronnie, your character carries the most weight in the film in terms of having been one of the people that basically creates the monster, and you've got all this baggage that you sort of have to deal with in this past. So what was your audition like? Were they looking for somebody that, you know, was gonna fit into Nancy's world, or did Wes have more of an idea for your character? Because I got the sense that your character says more about the world of Nightmare on Elm Street than people first think.
Well, I'm, of course, older because I'm Nancy's mom. And I had worked for quite a while. So I had done, the way it led up as a pathway is I had done a movie called Nashville with Robert Altman.
Who's seen Nashville? It's one of my favorite Altman films.
Thank you. And then I had done a movie called The Driver with Walter Hill, and then I had done some other movies, but I met my husband at the time, Wim Wenders, who was a German director, and his secretary was named Anita Lucioni. Then Anita Lucioni went to work for Bob Shea, the producer of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and John Saxon, who plays my husband in the movie, my ex-husband in the movie, on the basis of his name, and then my name secondarily. They raised 1.8 million to make the movie and get the completion bond, is my understanding. And when I was up for the movie, Anita Lucioni, my ex-husband's secretary, Bob Shea's secretary, was my roommate. So she was working for Bob, she knew about the movie, and she was working closely with Wes Craven, and so she suggested me for the part, and that's how I got the part. And I didn't have to audition, I just had to meet Wes. And it was a very nice meeting, and as I was telling Heather the other night, Wes's only question to me was whether I was old enough. And I said, yes, I am. Because I was. Nancy was to be 16, and I was 39, meaning I could have had Nancy then when I was 24. So that's how it worked out. It wasn't that hard.
I remember,
for me, I lucked out on that.
I remember hearing, because I was a huge fan of the film Nashville, and a huge fan of Ronnie's, and I also was a huge fan of John Saxon's. He'd done a Robert Redford movie that I loved called War Hunt, and he'd also done, I mean, aside from being Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he'd done my favorite Twilight Zone, and so I had my, I had my fix on John Saxon for a long time, and he'd done a great Brando Western called The Appaloosa that I worshipped. So when I heard Ronnie's name, that Ronnie was involved, and John Saxon, it immediately gave the project this prestige level, because back then, we sort of thought, well, some of us in my circle, we thought of Wes as a kind of David Lynch kind of guy. He was more known that way than he was as just pure horror, more surreal horror, like David Lynch was doing. But it's true, none of us would be here, none of us, if it wasn't for Ronnie and John Saxon, because they were the golden names that attracted all of the international investors that came in and gave New Line Cinema the money to make the movie. This is true.
So, Robert, your edition, Robert, is sort of one of those famous nightmare legends in that the story goes that you came in and you kind of blackened under your eyes and you had a stare down with Wes. Is that correct?
Well, I was 5'10" of ripping muscle then. No, I had, my hair looked like, what's his name, Billy Cat, remember Great American Hero? I had, that dreadful leftover 70s perm, and my hair was down to my shoulders, and I'd been surfing a lot. I had moved down to Bay Street in Santa Monica. My neighbor was Andy Kaufman, and I was surfing a lot between either Santa Monica or Leo Carrillo, which we used to call Sakis, which is Leo Carrillo is the famous actor, Hispanic actor from Hollywood, from the old Westerns. He owned half of Malibu at one time. And I was literally living over the guys that were the subject of the movie Dogtown, that some of you might know, which is the beginning of the skater revolution. And so I did not look like Freddy Krueger. And when I got the interview, I put cigarette ash with my saliva under my eyes to put like dark circles under my eyes because it looks quite natural. It's an old theater trick. And I grease my hair back with the dipstick of my sports car, you know, because I have fine hair and you could kind of see what I'd look like bald, and I had a high hairline to get rid of my my Peter Frampton curls. And my and that's what I had to do that because I knew I didn't look right. And Wes is such a great storyteller, as everybody on this panel will attest. And he's so wonderfully poetic and articulate when he speaks and succinct that it was real easy for me to shut up. As you know, I like to talk. I just shut up and just sort of tried not to blink, that old staring game we all play in grade school, you know, where you see who blinks first. I kind of did that with Les while I listened. But I know I must have had a smile on my face because he was telling me these great concepts. I mean, he was already, on my audition, he was talking about Bruno Bettelheim and the Brothers Grimm and how it was going to be this dark, twisted fairy tale. And I was just going, yeah, in my mind's eye, I could see what he was going to do. And I've often thought that the real truth to me getting the part is I have a very narrow face. And Wes just knew if he put makeup all over it, it would look normal. You know, Wes says that, you know, Robert was very intelligent and he understood my concept. Well, I did, but I'm not sure that that was displayed at my audition. I rather think that Annette Benson, the wonderful casting director, she had just seen me do screen tests for 6 roles in National Lampoon's Class Reunion. I screen tested with Annie Potts, I screen tested with lots and lots of people, and I didn't get in this movie, and I think Annette felt bad and just talked me up to Wes. So I've never known the real truth of this. You know, maybe someday Wes will let down his guard, like we all have a bit of guard up, and tell me what happened. I may just have gotten the part because I have a skinny face.
And of course, Nightmare on Elm Street was of that era of films, and I would say probably the leading film of what often gets referred to as rubber reality movies. These are films that, you know, there's a lot of surreal elements to them, a lot of special effects that are organic, a lot of makeup, blood, all that kind of stuff, sort of mind-bending things going on. That's definitely one of the key reasons that the film has endured and why people respond to it so much. But the other side of that is that it's a very demanding sort of project to undertake. You guys shot in 30 days, I believe. And just there's stuff that didn't even make it into the film because they just didn't have time or they were too ambitious to do it. So maybe tell us a little bit about your toughest day on set working in this world. I'll go down here to Heather first.
Well, tough in terms of physical demand was probably the bathtub, but it wasn't so uncomfortable in that it was just wet and kind of cold. And it was very, for me, I didn't actually have to work as hard as Jim had to work, who was our special effects man, who was in a scuba suit underneath me with Wes, kind of choreographing all of those, you know, plunges of the glove out of the bathtub. And then he pulls me down into the bathtub, and you know, I would try to escape. So each of those, and you think about how many different shots there are, that day was extremely long. Each of those shots was a separate setup, camera move many times, and so getting in and out of the tub all day, and often the water would get kind of cold, and Wes would be like, "Can you do one more take?" And I'm like, "Okay." And so that was a very demanding day. But I have to say, the other days when Robert and I were fighting, those days were demanding because he's strong and he's whipping me around the room, and we're choreographing, and we're trying to, you know, get it all right. It's very physical, lots of physical action, and throwing people on the bed, and those were very tiring days, as I remember.
Well, I got all the feathers up my nose because I had all the makeup on, so the feathers would stick to me.
And now they would never let us do a shot like that, like OSHA forbids the shooting in feathers or something like that.
But do you remember the day, we did the pickup shots one day, Heather, and we were directed by Sean Cunningham, the creator of Friday the 13th, and we were on like 3rd unit, which for me, third unit, you can always tell you're on third unit because it's last night's crunchy peanut butter, you know, and Doritos. That's what craft service is. It's real pathetic.
Well, and they also set up the set along the side of the soundstage. Literally, they just created an alley.
And it's real half-ass. And Heather, they were making Heather run, and I was chasing her, and I was leering out or something like that. It was this weird rack focus shot. But all I remember was there was all this work left over from the night before on the floor. They hadn't swept. And I finally called a halt to it. I don't know whether I was flirting with Heather and trying to be her white knight or not. But I remember Heather stepped on it. You stepped on a nail.
No, I stepped on I think it was a piece of glass because I didn't have to get a tetanus shot.
Yeah, and I remember I said, this is ridiculous. What's it take to sweep here? You've got her running back and forth. But I remember you and I were both really agitated and tired, and I think we probably were on about our 18th hour.
And I asked Bob Shea, the producer, I said, I'm bleeding, you know, quite profusely from my foot, and he's like, do you think this can wait till the end of the night? And I just went, no. And so they had to take me to the Hollywood hospital.
That's right, yeah.
And I had to get a stitch, and then I came back and went to work, and you know, they were really annoyed at how I had inconvenienced them that day.
Well, I think the blood is kind of a good segue. Talk to Amanda about the famous rotating room scene, because they tell this great story about how you know, they're moving this thing around, and people don't even realize because it's so seamless, but you're actually like being smashed off the walls and all that kind of stuff. And at one point, it was the Johnny Depp scene. I don't know if you're on set for that, but when the blood explodes, you know, what goes up must come down, and it kind of settled, but it was uneven, and the room tipped, and it all came gushing out, and exploded lights and all that kind of stuff. So you guys were working in
Jim
some
Doyle,
insane
they rotated
conditions.
the house the wrong way. Heather and I witnessed that. They'd already done the other scene, and it worked great with Amanda, but they rotated the house the wrong way, and all the blood went out the window of the bed. It was the same room that was Amanda's bedroom was redressed as Johnny Depp's. They just moved furniture around and put up new wallpaper.
The scene was supposed to have the blood coming out of the bed. The room was going to rotate, say, clockwise, and the blood would have dripped down the walls, really dramatically dripping
Like
down.
Stanley Kubrick's The Shining.
Exactly, but instead the blood went all out the empty side of the wall that had been available to get in and out of the room, and so it just landed on all of us watching and exploded all the lights.
Heather and I ran like little girls out into the Cahuenga Boulevard.
Suddenly, you guys are making Carrie. It was,
How are you not like electrocuted, right?
No, but that just shows you, like, when something bad goes wrong, all you filmmakers out there, just, you know, see if you can make it work. The fact that Wes made it work, because there was no taking a second take on that. So Wes made it work, and I don't think you would even know that it's probably a better choice, the way that it happened. It's way more surrealistic, very strange, and, you know, I think it's better than if the blood had gone down the walls.
Do you see it go up?
No, I mean, just think that the room has, instead of 6 sides, that room was only 5 sides, because everyone had to load equipment in and get out in one open side of that box. So the blood just went right out the box. And it was really exciting day.
so
I
Amanda,
missed it. I wasn't there.
but for your scene,
A blood tsunami.
Oh, blood tsunami.
that's a great
That
name
sounds
for a
like,
film.
that's like would be like a good grindhouse movie. Blood tsunami.
But for your scene, what was it like, sort of being in a human Yahtzee game? Like,
Oh yeah, right, like a bingo roller. You know what? It was really challenging, actor-wise. I mean, not like challenging life-wise, whatever. But at the end of it, I just want to cut to the end. I felt so amazing about myself when I got it done. I felt like I had gone skydiving or something. But you know, it was just tricky. There was a lot of responsibility. I was young. There was a lot of technical things in that room. It was, as everybody out here probably knows, it was a room built within the soundstage, and I think literally men cranked it around.
And then cranked it by hand.
So the room spun around, so everything in that room was nailed down, shellacked, glued. The cameraman and Rod were in airplane seats, like buckled in. So I was always on the floor as the room spun around, and they actually would end up upside down going around, and that's the view you see. And, but I got vertigo the first time we started to go around, and so I was just I was panicked because I thought I was falling. I was literally like felt my gravity going, which I thought was up, but whatever. I was so confused and so upset, and so Wes had to stop because once we introduced the actual, like, all the blood and all that stuff in there, like, you kind of had one good take. And so he was like, you know, you got to do this, and he talked, and I was just like, okay. And he's like, you're not gonna fall. I never believed him. I was so upset the whole time. So while I'm screaming, I am literally screaming because I think I'm falling. And the whole time, so I was really traumatized. I was very upset. I was dizzy for like 2 days after that scene. But then as soon as it was done, I felt great. I was like, oh my God, that was so amazing. I'm so awesome. I can't believe I did that. And it was so great. So I did like a total turn after it was over, but I was a complete like crybaby through the whole thing. I was so upset, and I just thought I was gonna fall. I thought the bed was gonna fall on my head. I was so upset, and so it was just funny. But then afterwards, I acted like I totally knew what was happening the whole time, and that I was so cool, and that I'd done it. So yeah, but I got vertigo, like, and it lasted a couple days.
You were our own, very own little Fred Astaire. Like the Stanley Donen Fred Astaire movie where Fred dances up and around. It's the exact same concept as that film, and you've all seen those clips of Fred Astaire dancing around. But imagine Amanda having to get to the position she needed to be for the shot the first time, and having to do what Fred Astaire did, just at that moment where gravity helps you to do it. But just before that moment, you feel like you're gonna upchuck, because your whole inner ear goes wacko.
We actually had a chance to watch that scene last week, and there's one move that you do where you're kind of in the corner and you reach towards Rod, and I'm thinking, were you reaching up at that point? It just looks like you're reaching down, obviously, the opposite of everything. But all the choreography of your body was, I just forgot how great it is.
Yeah, like he had me moving. It was really interesting. It was like there was points. He's like, you have to look like you're being pulled, and like we kind of worked out a way I would move my body along. And that scene actually, that's interesting, where I reach up for Rod. I'm on the floor reaching up, but I thought I was falling. So Wes was like, reach out, and I was like, I'll fall if I reach out because it's gonna knock me down. It's like, you're on the floor. I was so confused. But anyway, so that when I'm like screaming, I'm like, I'm falling, is really what I'm thinking. That's what I'm screaming.
Great.
How about for yourself, Veronica? Okay.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure everybody knows this, but standing in the soundstage, as if this room were the soundstage, the room was a box. It was like looking at a box, a big, large wooden box, up on winches, supported by things, so like literally just a big box that could whirl around and turn. What were you going to ask?
I was going to ask about your toughest day shooting the film. Your character's on less of a physical journey, tumbling around a room, and more on an emotional journey. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, there were two very tough moments. One was when I had to be in the kitchen with Heather and slap Heather and have a fight with her in the kitchen. Very, very difficult and tough. Very emotionally tough and physically tough. And I mean, it wasn't physically tough for any particular reason other than just trying to make it right. The toughest emotionally for me was taking the claws out of the stove in the basement and telling Heather that Mom had killed Freddie. That was very tough. Wes closed down the set that day.
I remember, yeah, because I wanted to watch, and I could have pulled some rank, but I remember because Wes was protecting you because you were so in the moment. He didn't want to lose it, you know. He knew you didn't want to lose it, you know.
He was protective. There may have been a couple of people there that day, but if they were kind of kept away in the dark.
You know, maybe you guys remember, but was the basement ever, was it on the sound stage too, or was that in the real house?
No, the basement was on the sound stage. Yeah, because when they did the fire stunt,
they had to
with
have
you,
that. Yeah.
Remember, all the oxygen went away.
Yeah.
We were all getting loopy because there was we had to open all the doors. By the way, we're working on the I Love Lucy soundstage,
Yeah.
which is kind of ironic.
The dilapidated.
Nightmare at Desilu. Babalu.
When I worked with the fire, I think it was at the house. And yet they didn't use my work with the fire. And I heard it's because they were so close to me that was maybe, I don't know, breaking some rules or something? I don't know.
They would have gotten in
They
trouble.
had to be careful, you know, with these kinds of union rules. And so me working with the fire, you don't really see it.
Well, Wes did a sequence with back to Amanda and the rotating bedroom. Wes added a shot there I talk about that I love because I remember this so strongly. He was going to give the camera to Amanda, and Amanda would shoot. I would hold Amanda's legs and be dragging her, and Amanda was going to shoot with a handheld camera of me pulling her, so the audience could see what Amanda saw, because the next cut would be her boyfriend, you know, on the bed, seeing just Amanda being dragged with nobody up there. You wouldn't see Freddie, and we couldn't give Amanda the camera. It just wasn't allowed. It was like a union, really strong union rule. So they got the cameraman's wife,
About that.
Amy, who was
Ann Coffey.
What?
Ann Coffey was her name.
Ann?
Ann. Yeah.
Ann. I always said it was Amy. Annie. Right, Annie Heitken. And they got her to operate the camera because she was our focus puller. And so I had to we put blood from Amanda on her legs. She took off her jeans and I dragged her and she filmed that. And at the end I dropped her legs, Amanda's legs, these white legs with blood all over them, point of view, gynecological stirrups, right? And I blew a kiss with my glove, a kiss of death. And as I did it, the blood, Amanda's makeup blood, was very thick. And it got all over my glove, the blades, and it formed like a spider web of blood, kind of mucusy. And I blew the kiss of death, and there was a blood bubble. And I actually saw this in the dailies, but Wes intentionally used that with the censors so that he could get all the other stuff he wanted to get in the movie. He was never, I don't think he ever really meant to use that because it was so frightening and disorienting. But much like if Ronnie was too close to the flames, we could get in trouble for that too. And that might have been something that Wes traded, so he could get something else he wanted in the movie. Wes is very sly that way because he'd been through the mill already on Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes. He knew he had to deal with these censors, and they're very mercurial. Sometimes they're on your side and sometimes they punish you.
One of the things that came across me when all the stuff I've read about the film and watched in documentaries is that there was this sense after it was made that what the hell are people gonna think about this film? Like, obviously nobody had an idea it was gonna blow up and to be this big iconic thing. What did you guys think after going through this? I mean, were you kind of like, oh, this is ridiculous, or, you know, this guy is amazing, it's like a fairy tale?
I just wanted to go to a party at Ronnie's house.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, in fact, I used to sneak up and watch Ronnie at the old Palomino Club up past Universal Studios. You know, she would go up there and sneak in and sing sometimes. And then there's the most amazing musicians. No, I don't think any of us. Did any of us think it was going to be?
No, in the last movie I had done before had gone straight to video, and the age of the independent film was just dawning, really. But a lot of them went straight to cable and other places. I didn't have confidence it would ever make it to the big screen. I didn't think that might not be its path. And I was setting myself up for disappointment because it happened before, and sometimes you just don't have any control over things like that.
I just didn't know. I didn't know. I